Typically, I'm talking to teams and corporate clients, and I'm all about workplace behaviors. But today, we're going to talk about how this works at home. We're going to go personal and talk about the family and how we communicate in our homes. Welcome back to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris. Before we dive into today's episode, click here to subscribe, hit that thumbs up, ring that bell so you're notified each week when we post new content. Today, I'm really excited about this podcast. I have got my son, John Harris, joining me on the podcast today. I've had my husband with me before, but today I've got my only son, and I'm really excited to have you. Welcome, John.
Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, even your role right now in life?
So I graduated from college about 3 years ago. Did a discipleship school with my church for about a year after that, and then moved to Austin. Currently working in marketing, actually helping produce this podcast behind the scenes. So I'm doing that. I'm the marketing director of a company called Increase You. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in life, just figuring things out post-college still. It's weird going from college and then COVID hits and then you just kind of get thrust into the real world.
Yeah.
But the real world that I get thrust to is very different than
Absolutely.
the normal one. And so it feels like there's been multiple transitions of going from, college, then the real world with COVID, then now the real world with kind of out COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, you've had an interesting transition from college into your work career. And as a parent, that's been just fascinating to watch you navigate that. I think you've done a great job. Way to go. With this podcast even. So you mentioned that you're helping behind the scenes here, but Increase You has been a fabulous partner of mine, producing all of my social media content, these podcasts, and it's been fun to work with you. I feel like I'm getting a little bit of my investment in that marketing degree back out as a mom. So,
very expensive one.
Yes,
Sick
this is
Bears.
true. Sick 'em Bears, that's right. Oh, goodness. Okay, so I would love just to kind of talk about, because we're very different. I mean, obviously, but just from a communication standpoint, very different behavioral styles, very different driving forces, probably as different as any of my children and even your dad. So let's just talk about that at first. So I'm a very high I, outgoing communicator, very direct in my communication, also assertive, fast-paced, get things done. And what's your style?
I am a high C and then a high S, so take more time to process things. I'm much more of an introvert, not super, outgoing in your face, talkative, all those kind of things. But when I'm really passionate about something and I care a lot about it, then I can become all those things.
Yes.
And I can become super in your face about it.
Yes, so true, very true. So parenting you, so John is my middle child. He has an older sister and a younger sister. And I think your communication style, behavioral style, was that of a peacemaker in our home. Like you were, drama on one end and emotions on the other and lots in the middle going on. But you were really the peacemaker of all the things. And I remember when you were very young, and I'm talking like still in the crib, I could tell your behavioral style. Isn't that so fascinating? You were so laid back. You were such an accommodator. You were just, I used to tell people that if every child was like John, I would probably have had 10 babies, because you were, honestly, of all three, you were the easiest baby to parent.
Are there like really practical, logical babies? Because that's how I think of myself, but I don't think of babies that way ever.
So I didn't notice the practical, logical, the C side of you so much when you were an infant. I noticed the S side of you, that accommodating, laid back, friendly. I mean, you woke up in a good mood. Your sister woke up demanding. I mean, from the moment moment she woke up, it was just like, I need to be fed, I need to be held, I need to be changed, I need to be with people. And you would lay in your crib and just look at the mobile and just, we're
Well, maybe
so happy.
that's why. Maybe it was because she took all the attention, so I had to learn how to cope without it.
This is true. That second child, maybe so. Maybe so. But it was so interesting just from that perspective. But one thing that I remember from in middle school, when I saw that, pace at which things are getting done, and you've heard me tell this story before, when the carpool would pull up, Mr. Corona, he'd be out there honking the horn, and I'd be like, John, time to go to school. And you would stand up and you'd walk slowly to the garage and get your shoes, and then you would walk back to the couch. And I'm like, put the shoes on in the car, because I am like, we got places to go, people to see, let's go. You got to get to school, go, 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 go. And that sense of urgency was pretty low in you.
My brain always just goes to, because when people are speeding a lot in traffic or that kind of stuff, I'm like, okay, how much time does this realistically save you? If it's like 30 seconds, I'm going to take my time. And, because that 30 seconds isn't that big a deal in the grand scheme of your day.
Yes, so true. But very different from mine. But I remember in middle school, this is one way. You're like, I don't know how you parented us with this disc stuff. So I remember you would come home from school, and I don't know if you remember this, but your dad was always like, get your homework done now. And I knew that you needed a little downtime. You needed some rest and some alone time, because you are an introvert. You've been with people all day. You've been, all the things. So I was like, let him go to his room for an hour. Yeah, he's going to play video games because you're a, middle school boy. But let's put a limit on that, and then do his homework. And so that was me using my knowledge of how you recharge to help you then be more productive to get your homework done. Do you remember that?
I still do that. One of my roommates, he's very high I, like through the roof. and he works from home, so he feels deprived throughout the day.
Alone all day.
And so
when you come home.
He one time made a comment to me when I came home. He's like, when you come home from work, I don't see you. Like, I feel like we don't even live in the same house. And I was like, well, that's probably because I go to work and I'm around a lot of people, and then I go sit on my bed and stare at my phone for 2 hours, just scrolling, because I just need to be alone and just decompress.
Yeah.
And there's not like anything that happens in that time, except I just need that time to sit there alone.
Yeah. And so that is how you recharge. And I think if we, like as a parent, if we parent every child the same, the way we think needs to happen, because I remember even your sisters, like one of your sisters would tell me all the details of everything throughout that happened. I knew who she sat with at lunch. I knew what they wore. I knew what the teacher said. I knew all the details. And then the other one would tell me that sometimes, but then sometimes we wouldn't speak the whole way home because she was, recharging, and then she was going to go to her room too, because she has a very different kind of that IC style. But yeah, I realized how you recharge. And so when we know that about our family members, when we know that about our children, we can really kind of help them figure that out. And also realize there's nothing wrong with that. Your dad needs alone time. That's how he recharges too, after being with people. And when we first got married, got really offended because I missed you. Let's talk. Let's hear all the things. Yeah. So when I realized, it's not me, it's him. Yeah, that's how you recharge. So let's talk about even some of those differences, like in our own communication style. And so, because you were raised by two parents that are very different, obviously. Your dad has
very different.
Very different. I'd love to know your perception. Like, what do you think of when you think of your mom and dad and how we communicated in our home?
Mom was the one that I would go to if I wanted a yes. But I knew that dad would oftentimes, if he wasn't like super, like he didn't care that much about it, he would say, I'm okay with it if your mom's okay with it. So I would go to him and say that, and he would say, I'm okay with it if mom's okay with it. So then I'd go to you and say, hey, dad said it's okay. Are you okay with this? And you'd say you're okay with it. And so then you both said the same thing, but in my mind, that means you both say it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I would go to you if I want a yes. Dad's definitely the very results-oriented person. Like, I always think when we go to the airport, we have to be there like 3 hours early. And then a lot of time is just sitting there, but that's because he has this schedule in his mind that is built in, and we can't miss this, because if we're 2 hours early as opposed to 3, we might miss the flight, and all those kind of things. That he's very precautionary about a lot of things.
Yes.
He wants to know everything and take all the safety measures or whatever to make sure that everything goes according to plan.
Yep.
To where you're a little more, just kind of go with the flow, which is funny because he always said go with the flow. That was like his thing when we went on vacations. But you're the one who's more go with the flow. We're in the car and you're talking to the person when the road's over here and it's whatever. But then we look back at the road, to where me and Dad are probably very similar, that we just stare at the road and we talk like that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. You're right. So true. Very different parenting style. I was always the yes. I mean, like, I truly wanted to say yes. Like, yes, let's do it. It's a dream. It's something you want to do. It's something fun. I'm all in. Yes, let's do it. And there was very few times that I was the immediate no. But then there were times where I had to be like, go talk to your dad, because I knew he would, nope, not going to happen for sure. Yeah, I used to tell him, excuse me, that we're raising lawyers because you all had to put so many things in place to present your case before, to have him stamp of approval. Yes. Do you remember? So when our kids graduated from high school, we used to let you plan our family vacation that summer. Where did you want to go after you graduated?
Italy.
Why did you want to go to Italy?
My favorite soccer team's from there, and this is going to sound really dumb, but if for any reason your audience has any guys my age, if you've ever played the video games Assassin's Creed, it's in Italy, and it was really cool, and I wanted to go there.
So we figured if we're going to Italy, we're going to go for more than just to see this soccer stadium in Milan and to...
That's what I wanted to go
That's
for.
what you wanted to do. So we flew in and out of Milan so that you could, and you got to go see the stadium. Your sisters and I shopped in the city. We did not attend that part. But then your older sister decided that she was going to plan the rest of the 2 weeks that we were going to be there. And she put together a spreadsheet. And
I didn't know this.
Yes, she put together a PowerPoint presentation for your father because she knew how to win him over. Yeah, of all the places. And so I think you also wanted to see the Colosseum in Rome. Yeah. So did those two things and they planned the rest. So.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily know or really care about Venice or Florence. Those places were really cool when we got there, but I just wanted to go to Rome and Milan, soccer team in the Colosseum. So.
Yeah. So did it,
Yep.
got those done. So yeah, so I think it's interesting though to see how different we all are. I mean, all 5 of us in our family, in our immediate family, of how different our communication styles are. I would say that we weren't always perfect at communication growing up, but I was always mindful of how can we do this better? Even your dad and I, like, how could we model healthy conflict and healthy communication in front of our kids, because that's a normal part of relationships. And so we didn't fight. I mean, we've had some discussions and we've had some disagreements, but we always tried to do it in a very healthy, productive way. And that's really because that's what I'm passionate about, and really modeling that before you guys. Do you think you learned anything about healthy conflict?
Kind of. I mean, y'all didn't like argue, but there was definitely moments where, and it was often just based on like a circumstance, that Dad was very focused on the scenario at play or getting there on time or whatever it was, and you were focused on Emma's having this moment or Hannah's doing this or whatever. So you're focused on like what's happening with the person. And those clashed sometimes.
Yes.
To where obviously like Dad cares about us as people and you care about being there on time, but like the way that y'all thought about things was definitely, there was those moments where y'all would bump heads on those kind of things.
Oh, for sure. And that's probably the biggest disagreements that we've had over the years, is his task focus and my people focus are so vastly different. And like you just said, we both care about people. We both value, getting places on time, but it's just what the priority is in the moment. and then, some interesting conversations for sure. So, so I'd like to end with kind of one final question for you. And so, as you're kind of even growing in your own like professional career, because you talked about college, you talked about, COVID, now post-COVID, and you're the marketing director and just kind of moving forward, kind of all the things that you've heard me talk about and learned about yourself. What's the number one thing like that you could take moving forward, even at work?
I think there's a really big self-awareness piece for me. I figured this out really young when I was playing sports. Because I'm very high C rules oriented, there's also like, it's not just the rules of like the law or the rules of the game. It's like the expectations that I set for someone else or the coach sets or whatever. And so there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And so oftentimes, because I was so focused on trying to win, because I'm also very competitive, if I get really focused on trying to win, I would start telling people, no, you needed to do this. And they might know that. If they don't, then I view it as like I'm making the team better. I'm telling them how to improve. So then the next time when that same situation happens, then we're better because they know what to do because I noticed it. But other people view that as me being really critical and like attacking their performance and telling them that they're not good enough or whatever. And so I, even to this day, in a variety of different things, I can come off as very critical to people.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just that self-awareness of trying to communicate that the right way, because I'm not a very emotional person when it comes to the way I communicate. Like obviously I feel a lot of emotions, but when I communicate things, it can come across as just very cold because I just say it matter of fact, like you needed to do this to be better. And so just trying to recognize that that's how I communicate, but that's not necessarily how people sometimes need to receive the same feedback. And so even to this day, I'm still trying to grow in that and learn like, how do I cater what I like my point and still try to get it across as efficiently as possible, because that's a big thing to me. And so that's why I say things super matter of fact, because that feels like super efficient and the best way to communicate the point. But how do I still communicate that in a way that somebody can receive that well, depending on their communication style? And I think that's important in work, because I think feedback is super important. And if you can't do feedback correctly in work, then you're never going to be able to accomplish what you want to. Even like me, receiving feedback is important because people need to grow in things and we all have different strengths. So yeah, I think there's just that self-awareness piece of understanding how people can perceive me based on what I'm saying and trying to change that perception while still accomplishing what I want through my communication.
Yeah, so good. That is amazing what you just said. Honestly, that's great. And that is a lifelong process. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years, your entire life plus some. And I'm still in process. I'm still learning. So I don't think we ever arrive. But if we can always have that attitude of being a lifelong learner, of I want to do it better. Like, yeah, I value procedure and I have a goal in mind. And yeah, it can feel critical when I point things out. So how can I tone that down and still communicate the point, but do it in a way that's honoring of everyone on the team, not just your preference. So,
and I think there was a point when I was younger that it just felt easier to be like, well, I'll just find the people who can handle it. Like I'll find those people that if they can't handle what I'm saying, they don't care about winning. Like they don't want to be as good as I want to be, or they don't want our team to be as successful as we want to be. And so that was sort of my natural inclination when I was younger. But I think that's just not how the world works, because it's impossible for me to only work with people who are like-minded. And if I did, then I don't think we would be as strong as we could be with people who think differently than I do. So trying to cater my communication so that they can receive it a certain way.
Yeah.
But also, I think other people, there needs to be that self-awareness too for them to cater their stuff so that I can receive it a certain way. Because the way that I might try to communicate to them so they can, receive that feedback well, might not be the way that I need them to communicate back to me, because then it feels like there's this fluff and emotion and whatever that I'm just like, no, like, just tell me how it is. So I think even another point too of trying to be upfront of communicating that, like, hey, if you're going to give me feedback, just
say it
straight up, be harsh. It might sound harsh, but to me it's not.
Yeah.
Because to me, I'm like, that makes sense. I need to be better.
So good. And that's what style flexibility is all about.
And it's harder than I'm making it sound right now, because I still try to,
Oh, yeah.
I battle with that every day.
It's not easy. It is not easy. It is difficult. It really is difficult. And self-awareness is the foundation. It's where you start. But then the application of it, like I said, it takes a lifetime. And if we can learn from our mistakes, and the fact that you brought up feedback and you're open to feedback, that is the doorway, honestly, into growing, into professional development, personal development, to be a better communicator, a better leader. And so I think that's a great place to end our conversation. I love it. I love you. Thanks, John, for being on the podcast with me. I hope you've learned something. It's not just about those relationships at work. We can apply all of this in our homes with our grown children even, and we can learn from them. I love it. I'm constantly just impressed by how you go after things, and even how you're, doing so much with my podcast. And thank you for sitting in that seat and being on the podcast today. But yeah, you can learn something new every day of your life. You can apply it at work. You can apply it at home. It can benefit every relationship. So join me next week. We're going to talk about more help for leaders. If you enjoyed this episode and would like more information on emotional intelligence, behavioral styles, or communication, I'd love for you to click here to watch more episodes. And we'd also love for you to click here to subscribe so you're notified each week when we post more content.